Welcome to the Mavens of Marketing, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Rachel Durkin.
And me, Carrie Barrett. We talk all things marketing, innovation, sales, and business growth strategies, and the standard tried and true marketing techniques.
Come for the conversation, stay for the savvy insights.
And the borderline inappropriate jokes.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Mavens of Marketing. I am one part of your talented and fabulous duo, Carrie Barrett. I'm joined by the also talented and fabulous Rachel Durkin. How are you?
I'm good. It's so great to see everybody, and I'm so excited to be here. We have an amazing guest today. But Carrie, I gotta tell you, you look amazing.
And
we
well, it's funny you should say that, Rachel.
I just called her out for everybody.
This face on in about 3 minutes flat, and underneath, it looks like I've been wrestling with a bag of hammers all night. So
Carrie literally showed up to this at like 9 o'clock to start filming, and she was like in her pajamas, and she's like, "Just give me 2 seconds," and comes back and looks like this, and it's insane.
I said, "Do I need to put makeup on?" And Rachel's like, I could see the wheels turning. How do I say this nicely? Yes.
You carried a conversation while you applied makeup and then looked fabulous. Well, I spent half an hour trying to just figure out how to do any part of makeup.
Well, and you look fabulous, my sweet.
It's amazing what happens when I clean up, right?
Well, and I am, by the way, this is Lorena Mosquera, for those of you who are not familiar with her beautiful face, makeup clad or not. And you got all decked out today because we have some exciting news.
We do.
Yeah. Are you ready to share?
I'm going to let Rachel do the honors.
Go for it.
Okay. So for those of you who have listened before, you know that Paradigm provides marketing, branding, and web services, focusing primarily on clients with complex sales, and we help them shorten their sales cycle and increase the number of meetings that their sales team's having. But where we really specialize in is helping our clients go from the marketing to sales process. So in my world, I don't believe it's marketing and sales, it's marketing to sales and following that funnel all the way through. And so we have worked with Lorena for years now with her company LW&H, which provides workflow solutions, and helping our clients implement and automate some of our processes by ramping up their CRM. And recently we just acquired LW&H. And so now Lorena is heading up our new workflow division at Paradigm. And so we're having her on today to give us some advice on how to use workflow to make your life a lot easier, efficient, and productive.
All that stalking. See, all that stalking that I did through Table for Four and just making sure I was embedded in their team paid off. It's so exciting.
This is exciting. I mean, first of all, Paradigm is a fabulous company with a remarkable team, but holy cow, Lorena, you're going to be bringing a lot to the table too.
I am so beyond thrilled. I mean, we all know Rachel is like, her brain just works in a way that many of us, I don't think, will ever reach that level.
I think you were saying many of us will never understand.
You know what? I'm like, this could go one of
you
two
win with
ways
the compliment.
right now.
Most people, it's a different. It's a whole different.
Just incredible. And she has built such a strong company with such amazing values. Like that team is just so well connected. And so I am completely and totally thrilled. This is really the next step in the evolution of workflows and CRMs. And I'm totally thrilled to be part of the Paradigm team going forward.
Well,
so.
You teed us up for the perfect first question, which is, what the heck is a workflow? What is workflow?
Workflow, if you can imagine, when you're following a recipe, when you're cooking, right? You're totally following the directions from your recipe book, step 1, step 2, step 3. Workflow is basically the same idea, but if you're looking at it from a business standpoint, right? You want to make sure that everyone understands what happens when you go from step A to step Z, and making sure that everybody understands what part their function is responsible for. So they need to know, I'm responsible for gathering this data because the next person in line needs to have this information in order to do their job. And so a workflow is really just a visualization. It's really just a map outlining what those roles and what those functions are so that everyone on the team kind of understands how everyone is supposed to be working together.
So Lorena actually has done different types of workflows, from HR to marketing to donor management systems. Today, we're going to focus a lot on marketing and maybe some donor management system conversations, and the marketing term is a CRM or a content relationship. No,
customer relationship
management system. Thank you, Lorena. Content management system is WordPress, and I'm thinking in my web brain right now. Anywho, so one of the things that we always have a challenge with when we're helping our clients set up their marketing infrastructure is, and if you go back to maybe some of our other podcasts, like Amy Porterfield's was a great one. And she talked about what you say, Carrie, as long as you have a list, you've got money. What was the quote? I don't know if you might.
As long as you have a list, it doesn't matter if everything else fails, you can still make money.
That's so true. So the first phase of any good marketing strategy in the B2B marketplace is to build your list with quality leads. And we've got, maybe while you guys are talking, I'll pull up this really cool infographic, but there's this concept of getting people into the funnel. Then they cycle through the funnel, and they can be in that funnel for a day, a week, an hour, months, years. I have clients that have come to me that have been following us for years, and they get re-engaged in that funnel through webinars or email marketing or sponsorships or download tools or blog posts or whatever it might be, but they become re-engaged with your company. And then at some point in that circular funnel, they get pushed back out into a sales process, right? And they have a consult or a salesperson reaches out to them. Now, where it gets now I can set up those, Paradigm can set up those automation systems pretty easy and make them run. But how do you start actually using the data? So Lorena, do you want to talk about that? Like, how do you actually make it tell you something?
Right. And so you bring up a great thing. And one of the things that Paradigm is known for and is really good for, right, is doing complex sales. If you're just selling a widget, it's pretty easy. You see the widget, you go to the website, buy the widget, you have the widget, done. When you're doing complex sales is when your process that you're talking about is totally key, and you need to be able to track the data. So once you've got a process that's going to be quite complicated and requires several touch points, and you might have several people involved, you want to make sure that that data that's coming in, that possible lead that you're going to be talking to, is more than just a figment of your imagination. And I use this explanation a lot when I'm talking to folks. When we're looking at the sales funnel, you've got your leads or your prospects that turn into opportunities, and hopefully from opportunities, they will become customers. So you need to be able to track certain points in that process to have some measures and to see whether your marketing strategies are working or not. For example, all those names that are coming in as leads or prospects, you want to have a trigger. You want to have a conversion rate. You want to know how many of those names that are coming in are actually converting to the next step. How many of them are reaching out to you or are answering your reaching out messages to say, yes, I do want to have a strategy session. Yes, I do want to have a discovery call or a consultation to see if this is the right fit for me. Once you convert them, you need to have what that trigger is. And normally, if you are just starting out as a one-time salesperson, one person that's running your entire sales division, and all of a sudden now you're going to have a junior salesperson or 2 or 3 people, you want to start to create those processes so that everybody's kind of doing things the same way. And that's when it's super important to have a CRM so that you can track everyone's activities and that everyone knows what that trigger for conversion is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what I always find really interesting is that just like your marketing evolves or your business evolves, your CRM has to evolve. So when we started our CRM, gosh, Lorena, when did you help us set up our CRM the first time? It was like 3 or 4 years ago now, right?
Really like 4 plus years ago.
We had 2 salespeople. And now we have 4 salespeople. So it becomes more and more challenging because we would do something in an antiquated way. And now suddenly I go back to Lorena and say, well, Vicky talked to this person, and so did Lisa, and so did I. So now how do we know whose court the ball is in?
Exactly.
And how do you eliminate inefficiencies? So for example, if I'm wanting to use an Excel document to make sure that Vicky doesn't talk to Lisa's person, how do you make sure that those things don't happen?
Right. So if I go back for the triggers for a second, and when you're trying to make sure that those things don't happen again, if everyone's aware what the triggers are, everyone knows what the next action step is. When you're using an Excel sheet, it's really hard to track those triggers because not everyone is going to be able to see it from a big picture perspective. So when you're tracking your data in Excel, it's very linear, right? It's just a bunch of rows. You can have pivot tables, and I have seen some amazing spreadsheets in my day. Mm-hmm. You can have pivot tables, you can have lookup charts, you can have lookup fields. But at the end of the day, they don't give you the big picture dashboard views that allow you to see who's touching, which accounts, how many touch points did it take for them to call you back. It's not giving you that data in a real time basis that everyone can kind of benefit from. So when you go to look up a name, if I can just do a quick master search and search the entire database for any connection with that particular person, it's going to tell me from the second that I enter that name, how many people that person has interacted with, how many email campaigns they've touched, how many times you've called them. Like, it gives me a full account history to know how many times they've gone to a webinar, how many times they've read your emails, how many times they've clicked on the link. I can see everything from one shot. You can't do that with an Excel spreadsheet. So it creates a lot of doubt, and it creates a lot of, and again, if you've got a competitive sales team that is particularly paid on commissions, you don't want an adversarial, territorial attitude to be put into place, because now it's, well, I met them at this event 2 weeks ago. That's what triggered the sale. No, I met them at an event last week, and that's what triggered the sale.
Yeah.
And you don't want that kind of relationship with your sales team. You want everyone to be on the same team, which is, make the company money at the end of the day.
You bring up a good point though, Lorena, which is what I was trying to say, like how you connect all the dots and make sure there's no overlap and you are eliminating inefficiencies, capitalizing on the efficiencies you do have. How do you know if you're using your CRM correctly and to its fullest capacity, perhaps?
Well, it really depends. So depending on what kind of company you are and what kind of CRM you're choosing, you might have just seen something on the web. CRMs do a lot of advertising. You might have seen something on the web that looked good and you clicked on it and you're like, oh, this is great. It's like an enhanced Rolodex, right? We remember the days of a Rolodex. This is going to be great. But then you really don't look at the in between the lines of what the system can do. And most of us are not in the business of CRMs. I mean, why would you? I mean, I don't go to the cardiologist and start asking him about the most recent, latest procedures to do any sort of heart issues and diagnostics, right? We all kind of stick to our lane. So it's super important that you work with someone, whether it's a customer service or a tech support team from whatever system you're working with, or primarily and hopefully someone that's an expert in their field, so that you can understand how to increase the use that you have from your team. Because at the end of the day, using a CRM is a huge behavior modification. And if your team is not on board with going into the system and utilizing the system on an everyday basis, you're really not going to get the best use out of it. And it doesn't matter what kind of bells and whistles you can get with that CRM. If the team isn't using it and isn't buying into it, it's really not going to get you anywhere. But as you have the team that buys into the idea of why it's necessary, and as you actually start entering the data, by just nature, you're going to start asking questions. Can I connect my email to this? Can I connect my mass email marketing system like a MailChimp or a Constant Contact? Can I connect, my bookkeeping system to this? As you start to build your team into the system, the ideas start to flow naturally. And that's when you start asking questions of, what else can my system do?
That's such a good point, Lorena. And I've seen this so many times. And unless you're a very, very large organization, you've got change management, consultants with you who are going to really, get a new technology adopted. For us smaller businesses, I think it's so important to start slow and implement one new thing over time. And I'll give you an example. So when we start with our CRM system, or even our small clients who are they literally are working off Excel and they need somewhere a depository of info, like where to put their information.
Yeah.
And they might start with the cheaper CRM, like Sugar or Zoho or something that's pretty basic. But with the understanding that in a few years, when they understand how it can be used to be so impactful to their business, they switch over to a HubSpot or a Salesforce or something even more, that has more workflow opportunities and things like that. But what I have found is creating marketing infrastructure. So let's go back to the CRM a second. What happens a lot, and Lorena, one of my strategists told me that Lorena saved her butt, because we created an entire marketing infrastructure for a very large client of ours. And we were producing, a lot of it was automated, and we were producing a ton of leads for them, and they weren't closing. And when leads aren't closing, that's an indicator. It can be a couple of things, but from a marketing standpoint is where we're getting them the wrong type of leads. that their sales team was having just really crappy meetings, and we could not figure out what we were doing wrong. And finally, you created a program which we call sales enablement within the CRM, right, Lorena?
Yep.
Where the sales manager can actually track KPIs and phone calls being made and data and you finished the story, Lorena.
Yeah, so it's literally the sales team, was in a growing phase. And of course, Paradigm was doing their job very well and sending a lot of leads in their way. And they were having a really tough time, number one, identifying which team member is overwhelmed and which team member is maybe not making the right phone calls, or which team member maybe needs a little bit more help to make sure that they're closing the sale. So we created an enormous and beautiful, because I'm such a data geek, a beautiful color-coded, all sorts of bells and whistles dashboard for them, that at the click of any button, they could literally see how many leads came in, where did those leads come in from, how many of those leads actually clicked on the link in an email, how many of those leads were actually called and qualified, what kind of questions those leads that they did talk to answer to see which department and which person they should be going to, so on and so forth. And we were able to get them down to the funnel, down to like really identifying the exact type of client that they are. Rachel does a lot of research on like the DNA of a client. And because of understanding what they were looking for by doing these KPI dashboards, they were able to identify which members of their team needed to go back for some additional sales training, because they were not actually doing some of the sales processes that they felt that they needed to successfully close and convert those clients. Then they were able to say, oh, we need to hire help for this one other person because he's closing everything, and we need to find him an administrative assistant, and then we need to find somebody else that'll help him with some of the more admin functions. They were literally able to develop a department of junior sales and account managers because they were able to see how many leads were coming in that needed to be offloaded to somebody else on the team. Does that kind of all flow together?
Yeah, and the other thing that I want to add on to that, which we're seeing as well, is once this infrastructure and this information is in place, what we're seeing is a split into sales functions. So if you like the keep, attract, retain, re-engage and expand strategies. So they're having inside sales, outside sales, and they're splitting up these functions based on skill set, because we're able to literally see who's good at what from the data in the sales enablement tool.
Absolutely.
In the CRM. So
it helps with career and growth development, right? One of the things that you want to have is you want to have your employees be engaged in the success of themselves and the company. So if you're able to give a dashboard that they have real-time access to, what is closing, what is pending, what is sitting there, that I cannot close and I don't know why I can't close it and I need help. I need somebody to come and join me on a call and help me land this account because I'm just not getting through to them. Having those dashboards and having the visibility to, at a click, be able to see, this has been sitting there for a very long time. What can I do as management to help you close this deal? Or you're sitting on this particular area for too long. Or on the other side, you are closing them so quickly. Can you have a small workshop with the rest of the team and tell us what you're doing that's working so well?
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. Hey, I would like to ask you, I'll be honest with you, as anybody who watches this or listens to this podcast knows, I can do a lot of public speaking stuff. All of this is like way above my pay grade. So how do you, what is your process, I guess is the right way to ask this question, to choose a particular CRM for a client? How do you know it's the right kind? And then how do you move from choosing it to actually implementing it?
So the very first thing I do is always do an assessment. And you can do that on your own if you're a small company and you're just not sure if you're ready to engage somebody. But the assessment for me is really just a very lengthy conversation to get down to the nitty gritty. If you had a magic wand and you could just wave it and the system did everything you wanted it to do without having to do anything, you just said it and it happened, what would those things be? Then you want to write down what are the things that whatever you are doing, whether it's tracking it on paper, tracking it in Excel, or whatever it is that you're using, what is it that is working really well for you? What is it not working for you? What parts are so painful that you literally cringe when you have to do these items? And what is it in the long run? And that could be 3 months, 6 months, or 5 years from now. I mean, depends on how much you're looking to grow your company. Where is it that you kind of want to end? What is it that you want to have as far as reports, metrics, or data that you want to compare? We start with writing it all down just so that we can get a visual, right? Because sometimes the things that we think we want are not necessarily what we actually need right now. Once we put that all on paper, we're going to do a very basic review of your workflow. If you are not able to explain to me as like the person outside of your company what your process is from step 1 through step 10 to get that deal closed and put into action, the odds are is that a CRM isn't going to be able to magically do it for you either. So we need to have that workflow created and understood and have buy-in from all the team members so that as we put in any system in place, we will be able to follow along. And that could be as simple as when a lead comes in, we need to send out an email, we need to call them, and we need to be able to follow up. That is part of your workflow. And we need to be able to understand what all of it entails so that then you're able to say, oh, I need a CRM that's super complicated because I want it to do a lot of automation, or I need to start off super small, which is always the recommended approach. And I just need something that'll allow me to enter the names and enter when my next touch point is going to be, when my next call is supposed to be with them, so that I don't drop the ball and not stop calling them to make sure that everything's going as planned.
So I just want to follow up with something you said, and I totally agree, but then there's always a caveat, right?
Yes.
Always start small, because
always
again, we want to make sure that we are that the human element of this is applying the technology that it's given in order, we always call it garbage in, garbage out. The data you get into a CRM is going to be what comes out of it, and the data that comes out of it. But the thing that's wonderful about Lorena, sometimes I have to reel her in even, but it's a massive strength, is that she thinks, just like we do for when we're building a website for a client, she thinks 3, 4, 5 years out, because she's seen it all. So while we're always starting small, she's still doing the assessment. She's talking to every single expert in your company. And the reason that's important is because everybody, what's the saying that there might be something in the middle and every single person sees a tiny different angle of something.
Absolutely.
So always something that someone's not thinking about. There's always a process or a procedure that one individual will find more valuable than the other, and making sure that that is understood throughout the organization before you just buy something, because otherwise you're going to put bad money before good. If you get a CRM that's going to be too basic, it won't be scalable to achieve what you need in 3 years. If you get a CRM that's way too expensive and complex, nobody will ever use it. So it's about figuring out that sweet spot. What is going to allow you to start small and learn, but also be scalable, right?
Absolutely. And when we do the assessments, one of the key things that we actually require is we want to have, the top decision makers, depending on the size of the company, the really top level guys that want to see, guys, ladies, I shouldn't be sexist here, sorry. The top people, I want the top players to be involved in the decision-making process. But like Rachel said, I want an expert in each one of the areas that we're talking about to understand what that middle management is looking for. But I also talk to the folks that are actually entering the data and that are going to have the responsibility of feeding that information. Because at the end of the day, if management wants to see ABC, but ABC is nowhere on the entry form or in the entry process, they're never going to see it. Mm-hmm. So it's important to talk to everyone so that everyone is on the same page. And a lot of the times what we end up seeing is, they thought they had a really great workflow and they thought what they needed was the CRM to kind of fix their problems. And in reality, what they needed was to start with workflow first to map everything out, to then start to compare what CRM would be the best fit. A lot of the times people come to me, it's like, I need a HubSpot. I need this system. I need Zoho. I need this. And in reality, it's like, well, let's back off a little bit. Let's think about how simple or how complex do we want to be? Because if we go too crazy complex, the adaptability of the adoption of your users is going to be so low that it's not going to go anywhere. So you want to have a really high user adoption. And to do that, you have to have buy-in from them, and they need to understand the why you're doing it and the how we're going to get there.
And we do this in business in general when we're talking to our clients about marketing. start with the why in mind. What data do you want to get out of this? What do I want to be able to click a button and get information on so I can make smart decisions, and then back into it, because it makes a huge difference on how you approach a project. And I think it's more successful in the long term.
Yeah. And like you said, you're going to grow and change, and your needs are going to be different over time. I mean, if we just talk about your CRM for a second, Rachel, when you first started, you wanted to know where the leads were coming from. And that's what we call the lead source, right? You just wanted to know where they were coming from. Were they coming from the website, from a networking event? And that's all you really wanted. As you went further down the road, we added a second level.
I wanted more and more.
Right. You wanted to know, well, great, it was a networking event, but which networking event, which association? As you went further down the line, it was more important to not just know which networking event and which association, but which committee or, group within that networking event, or which webinar within the series of webinars that you do. So now we've gotten down to the detail.
Yeah. And I didn't think that through enough in the beginning, because when you're earlier in business, you don't know what you don't know. And so sometimes having a CRM expert can help you ask the questions that you don't even know to ask yourself, or even just any sort of strategist, whether it's a marketing strategist or a consultant. I always say, bring somebody in to ask you the right questions before you jump into something.
And I will joke around with my clients all the time and tell them that there is a love-hate relationship with a CRM consultant. Unlike any other professional, they're bringing you solutions and ideas that you can implement rather quickly, and kind of start to see and gauge how that's working. With a CRM, it's kind of different, and they have a love-hate relationship with me. First meeting, it's amazing. It's wonderful. They're so excited of all the things that we might be able to implement and automate for them. They're super excited during the assessment part. They're like, this is great. This is so amazing. Then there's a little bit of the annoyance phase where it's like, why are you asking me all these questions? They have nothing to do with the CRM. They have nothing to do with the system, but they don't understand how much of an impact some of the account management, some of the finance might play into a CRM, so that you're able to create the right tool, or at least understand what data they're looking for. Then comes like this little aha moment where they get it. So then we're back to like really good, and they love me again. And then we start to kind of implement the process, and they start to like get annoyed because they don't understand why it's taking so long, or why do we need to know this detail, and how do we get this set up correctly? And then again, they start to see it and it clicks and it's amazing again. Then they start to use it. And while they're starting to use it, the behavior modification, the psychological effects of that are so like, good thing I have a thick skin, because they can get quite like, why is this not working? Oh, because I didn't click save, or I didn't realize that was, I had to refresh the browser or something simple. And then all of a sudden one day it all clicks and it's all magical. And they're like, I don't imagine my life without this. And can we get this to do this? All of a sudden the wheels start to work and everything clicks. And all of a sudden they want more and they want to add on. And those are the best scenarios. And then I have to bring it back and be like, okay, let's keep doing this for like 3 or 6 months. Let's see how this is working before we edit it and change it and take it to the next step again.
So everything works magically.
I love that. Yes. That's a very catchphrase.
Hey, so we're coming up on time, but as you know, Lorena, because you are an avid listener to the Mavens of Marketing, and we love you for it. We always wrap our interviews with this final question, which is, what is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you?
The weirdest thing that's ever happened to me was I'm from Ecuador. So I was born in Ecuador. And when I was 18, I went back to Ecuador with my sister, my boyfriend at the time. And, we all went away. And I'm allergic to mosquitoes, being from Ecuador in the jungle, right? And I'm allergic to mosquitoes. So I sprayed so much bug spray everywhere, because like I was so deathly afraid of like getting mosquito bites. Obviously, we were in the jungle, we were in a tour, and I didn't want to get sick. Well, I sprayed way too much, and everybody was swinging off of vines thinking that it would be so cool. Did not think this through correctly. Took the vine and swung off the vine off this 18-foot cliff thinking that it would be fine. Forgot I had all that bug spray on. And I literally started to slide down, and I literally saw my life flash before my eyes, because I was like, oh my God, how did I do this? And they were able to bring me back, but I had literally destroyed my hands in the process, like just total rug burn. And by far, that's the weirdest and most strangest thing I've ever done, because I have no upper body strength. I should have known that from the very beginning. Forget the bug stuff. I am as weak as
Body
you can
strength. And
imagine.
you know what would be a good idea if I put oil all over my body and
Exactly.
then
It's like I have no upper body strength and I just put a bunch of stuff that'll make it, easy to die.
Virtually impossible for you to hold on to anything.
So to me,
Let
it's
alone
like the
hold your
weirdest.
body weight up, swinging over a cliff in the jungle.
Yeah. So that's the weirdest and the dumbest thing I've ever done, I
I
think.
think it's like definitely a combo. She's really good at CRM though. That much we can promise. Other areas, maybe not so much.
don't take her.
Don't
into the
hire her to
jungle.
be a tour guide. Lorena, as always, amazing to learn and listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so excited. And like I said, I love the podcast and I'm so giddy to be part of the Paradigm team now.
Oh, well, congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
I want to be in on this party. What the heck, man?
All right, you're the next acquisition, Carrie. We'll start negotiations.
Rachel's just taking over the world.
Taking over the world. That's the kind of train I want to be on for sure. To our fabulous audience, thank you once again for joining us for this episode of the Mavens of Marketing. We'll see you back here next week. Same time, same place. Bye.